So I've been listening to Feed the Beast by Kim Petras, and while I usually end up listening to my favorite songs in isolation anyway, I agree with a lot of people that the tracklist probably should have been ordered a little bit differently. Apparently on Apple Music it says the album is about sacrificing every part of yourself to your biggest passion in life, so I'd like to use that as the narrative through line that guides my reordering of the album. The album opens with Uh-Oh, basically to give the listener a shot of adrenaline right out the gate. It shows Kim at the top of her game, max confidence, calling everyone's attention, and pushing aside any doubt that everything she drops is a banger. It's a bold proclamation that's very much supported by the quality of the song, and it sets the stage for the album's club-centered first half. However, the other reason I put this track first is just that none of the other songs really lead into Uh-Oh very easily. After Uh-Oh is the title track, Feed the Beast. This song introduces Kim's love interest, who she pursues for the next few tracks. The first verse specifically depicts her spotting this guy from across the room and fantasizing about their inevitable sexual encounter. The chorus goes on to describe how it'll go down, though it's interesting to note how the line, "Throw you my heart like you me please," implies that this man is the beast being fed. The first half of the chorus portrays Kim as the beast with an insatiable appetite, but in reality, Kim is the one sacrificing herself to him because she knows that nothing comes for free. It brings to mind the idea of a demonic sacrifice or satanic bargain, which is fitting since the devil is sometimes referred to as the beast. I mention this because it suggests that Kim is already sensing some red flags, but decides to go for it anyways, which serves as light foreshadowing for the second half of the album. The third track is Bait, which is mostly just Kim and Banks wondering how to entice her love interest. The biting imagery in Kim's verse vaguely calls back to Feed the Beast, but for the most part she's just intrigued by him, while Banks tries to use her fame to attract him. Since Kim is presumably the bait, this track further lends credence to the idea that Kim is the one being eaten in this situation, but other than that I don't have much to say about this one. So from there we move on to Hit It From the Back, where we find out that the aforementioned bait was anal. I imagine this taking place on the following night just because the first verse begins with Kim in her room dreaming about her crush, but after that I think she's talking to her love interest directly, with the second verse essentially serving as her pitch of what it'd be like if they hooked up. It's a fairly straightforward song, though the line, "Before you break my heart," serves as another hint that Kim expects this relationship to be bad for her. Next is Alone. Although this song arguably could have been put earlier in the album since it conveys a similar sense of desire, the chorus says, "I've been trying to give it to you all night," which implies that this has been going on for a while. It seems hitting it from the back wasn't enough to intrigue Kim's crush, because now he's surrounded by a bunch of other women, and Kim is more desperate than ever to get this guy's attention. Half the chorus is Kim trying to formulate a way to attract him, while the other half is her just wishing he'd come to her instead, until Nikki steps in to make way for herself and Kim. However, despite ultimately getting his attention, I feel like this song marks a minor turning point because here, Kim finally admits to being lonely, which will become a very important detail later in the album. But anyway, now that Kim finally has her love interest's attention, she's able to get him out of the club and into the castle in the sky. This could be taken a handful of ways. Given the reference to drugs in the pre-chorus, it could just mean reaching a high together, but the line, "Don't stop baby until we get to heaven tonight," also brings to mind 7 Minutes in Heaven, so maybe they're already having sex in this song. My interpretation is that she's simply on the dance floor urging her love interest to leave with her, but perhaps it's all these things simultaneously. In any case, it feels like an impulsive decision fueled by drugs and Kim's own eagerness. The line, "I want to get ruined," and the reference to tragedy and fantasy in the second verse adds to the sense of foreboding surrounding this relationship, but for now Kim doesn't seem very bothered by that and is still very willing to go through with it at this point. And so, after successfully convincing her lover to come with her, Kim is finally able to get what she's been waiting for in Revelations. Funnily enough, despite being one of the holdovers from Problematique, this track actually manages to connect to a lot of the previous songs on the album, including the mention of her heartbeat racing from Castle in the Sky, demanding her lover's touch from Feed the Beast, her impatience from Alone, and the desire to have him last all night from Hit It From the Back. The line, "You beam me up," specifically, along with the references to heaven, connect back to Castle in the Sky, which is why I felt it was appropriate to put Revelations directly after it. However, while there are a lot of religious references in this song, it's worth noting that she says, "I'm not looking for salvation," and the line, "You make me beg for it, pay for it desperately," calls back to the bargain I mentioned from Feed the Beast. Aside from that, I'd like to just take a quick detour so I can mention how the instrumental of this song really gives like a nice, sleek visual. Despite the album's medieval theme, I could totally imagine this song being accompanied by some kind of like sci-fi anime music video set in space. The guitar solo at the end specifically gives me the image of like a futuristic car or spaceship moving at light speed into another dimension, And that's just really cool. And since this is the point where Kim actually manages to hook up with her love interest, the guitar solo also feels like an abstract musical representation of like an insane climax topped off with a satisfied woo. Obviously that wouldn't be in the music video, but if the album's medieval aesthetic could be blended with the song's religious themes and futuristic production, I think that would be really awesome. But anyways, after their initial sexual encounter, we get sex talk. While this song arguably could have gone before Revelations or even Castle in the Sky, I felt it was better to put it after them since it serves as a nice break from the explosive energy of the last two songs, while also giving Kim and her man some time to have a honeymoon phase. Some familiar themes pop up here like secrecy, drugs, and Kim's desire for attention, but for the most part, Kim is just happy to be with her man because, they're basically just fucking around at this point. If this album were the soundtrack to a movie, this would be the point in the rom-com where they have like a montage of them on multiple dates before tastefully cutting to shots of them like giggling and sneaking into like a janitor's closet or a hotel room or behind some bushes just to like have sex or whatever. It's probably the most lighthearted and bubbly track on the album, but it's also the last upbeat song before the dramatic second half. And that second half begins with Minute. Within the context of the album, this song fast forwards to a point where Kim has been seeing this guy regularly, but he's constantly pulled away by other responsibilities. Based on the line, "You fall apart, I always fix it," combined with Kim's overall desire to prolong their time together, it seems they've become extremely dependent on each other. However, it's especially hard on Kim, who's torn between breaking up with him and staying together, which is summed up in the line, "I should shut the door and lock it, but all I really want is you." Essentially, she doesn't want to withstand the pain of being left alone all the time, but because she's so attached to him, she can't bring herself to break things off. In a way, it reminds me of Stay by The Kid Laroi and Justin Bieber, in the sense that they're both about a longing to stay together, plus they just sound very similar sonically. However, while Minute takes the perspective of a girl missing her unreliable boyfriend, Stay is about a guy asking for his girlfriend's forgiveness, which, coincidentally, ties into the next song, kind of. Unholy is where we discover what Kim's boyfriend has been up to whenever he leaves her. While this song was originally just about a third party observing the goings-on of a man caught in an affair, here it serves as a perspective shift that deliberately disrupts Kim's narrative in order to deliver a massive emotional gut punch that recontextualizes the entire album thus far. The details present in previous songs, such as Kim's love interest being surrounded by other women in Alone, and the secrets she brought up in Feed the Beast and Sex Talk, are made clear here. The religious themes from Castle in the Sky and Revelations are inverted, and Kim's longing for intimacy in Minute has been betrayed. Essentially, Unholy becomes a massive right hook to the audience and to Kim, but more importantly, it sets the stage for the dramatic final act of the album. In King of Hearts, Kim finds out about her man's cheating and breaks up with him. This is definitely the angriest we see her, and her rage is symbolized by the heavy synths that play at the beginning of the song, and at the end of each chorus, almost like a warning signal. They kind of remind me of the blaring horns at the start of the Ultra Beast theme from Pokemon Sun and Moon. But like, in the first verse, Kim briefly recounts her initial encounter with her love interest while lamenting the fact that she ignored the red flags surrounding him. She knew that pursuing him would come at a cost, she expected him to break her heart, and apparently everyone had seen him sneaking around with other women, but she ignored it all. She fully cuts him out of her life by the second verse, but the last line where she says, "You just waste my time," has an extra sting to it when put after Minute. Once Kim's bombastic rant is over, we get into the emotional aftermath of their breakup with Thousand Pieces. This song mostly just reflects on the regret mentioned in King of Hearts, but there are a number of minor callbacks to previous tracks, including the speed of her heart from Castle in the Sky and Revelations, and her prediction of brokenheartedness from Hit It From the Back. The line, "Careful what you touch because everything can break in two," could be a reference to the multitude of times she asked for her lover's touch, and instead of shutting the door and locking it like in Minute, Kim is just straight up gone. The overall production evokes Kim's sound from her Clarity era, and given that album's lyrical themes of fragility and brokenness, it really does fit this song. Next is Claws, where Kim essentially goes through withdrawal. This track ties into the other drug references made throughout the album, but what distinguishes this song from the previous ones is that here, it's used to describe a painful addiction rather than a fun time. In each verse, Kim questions why she wants to return to someone that doesn't even want her back, and by the bridge, she eventually submits to the fact that she can't bring herself to leave him, which is reiterated in the chorus. Specifically, the line, "'Cause you sink your teeth in every scar and it gives me pleasure," is key in understanding why she wants him back, and it could relate to Bait, or hit it from the back, but I think in a broad sense, the biting imagery calls back to the general idea of feeding the beast. In a meta sense, feed the beast... Shut the fuck up. In a meta sense, feed the beast refers to Kim feeding the demands of her label and the music industry, but in the context of the album, I interpret it to mean that she's allowed herself to be consumed by this relationship, and Claws is where we see the cost of Kim sacrificing her heart to this man. And so, after finally giving in to her cravings, the album closes out with Burr. The first verse opens with Kim driving out just to see her ex. Although she says she's glad to be with him, the fatalistic language tinges her words with a sense of harshness. Her love interest acts cold to her until Kim goads him into showing her some kind of emotion. And by the second verse, she doesn't even seem to care what happens to her. She just wants him to have his way with her, which links back to the previous song where she asks, if it's so masochistic, why does it hit just the same? Pretty much the entirety of Claws explains why Kim would return to this man despite all the pain he's caused her, simply because that's the price of sacrificing every part of yourself to your biggest passion in life. I feel a bit bad for giving this album such a downer ending, especially as Kim's major label debut, but since the album's premise is built on the idea of sacrificing yourself to something greater, it's hard to come up with something that's a little bit more uplifting. Hell, these songs probably aren't even about the same relationship since Kim recorded this album over the course of 3 years. I'd hate to put words in Kim's mouth, but I do think piecing those experiences together would have resulted in the album having a more cohesive narrative. That said, I am a bit shaky on how I structured the first half, even though I am very confident about the second half. Of the official tracks, Coconuts was the only one I felt had to be cut entirely. Despite being released in the summer, Feed the Beast has more of a high-energy club feel than a chill beachside vibe, so Coconuts felt very off-brand for this album. As much as I love the song, it should have stayed a standalone single like Malibu, especially with how old it is. Granted, it was recorded around the same time as the other Problematique tracks, but even in that album it felt noticeably out of place, and at this point it isn't very indicative of Kim's current direction as an artist. If I had to choose a replacement to serve as a bonus track, I think Kim's cover of Running Up That Hill would be a much more fitting choice, since its instrumentation, tone, and religious imagery are infinitely more consistent with the second half of the album. But if royalty fees are an issue, then I'd at least put a more recent song like If Jesus Was a Rock Star instead. While it doesn't fit with the rest of the album lyrically, or even sonically, the allusions to religion provide some connective tissue, and the acoustic production could serve as a nice change of pace. But anyway, I don't want to give the impression that Feed the Beast was a disaster or anything. I'm happy with most of the songs. There are a few tracks from Problematique that I would have liked to have made the cut, like Deeper and All She Wants, but then again I'm not sure where they would fit, assuming that the album's general theme would stay the same. Of the songs that did make it onto Feed the Beast, I'd say my favorite is Revelations, while my favorite new song is currently Claws. Also, while Thousand Pieces is far from my favorite track, I'm weirdly excited for the German version of it. But yeah, I hope that anyone who hasn't already listened to the album listens to it. You can literally just find it on YouTube, so, But I'll try to make a playlist with my track order and put it in the description. If you have any other ideas on how to organize the album, I'd be interested to hear them. It doesn't have to be a track-by-track analysis or anything, but leaving a brief overview in the comments would be much appreciated. Anyway, that's all I have for now, so I guess I'll see you later. Woo! Ah. Okay, so aside from the album, I'm just really excited about this video since it's the fastest I've pumped out a script. I started my initial draft on a Monday and finished it on Tuesday, but then my sister turned off my computer and I lost the Word document I was writing on. But that was only 2 days, so it wasn't a big deal. I started rewriting everything on Wednesday while the memory of the first draft was still fresh in my brain, and I'm currently finishing this up on a Sunday, so I basically wrote this in a week, which is so much shorter than any of my previous videos. Even the Best Pokemon Team video took a month to write just because I was struggling with how to phrase things, so I'm actually really happy that this writing process wasn't nearly as painful. I hope the filming and editing process won't take too long, but knowing me, it probably will. But hopefully I can get this out before school starts, Jesus Christ.